Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter, banter.
Wow. Hey, this
chorus
is
of cowbells.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. It's like a choir, the cowbell choir coming in. Hey, this is, of course, a podcast where we talk with advocates and members of the disability community to educate and inspire better conversation about disability. Hey there, my name is. Oh, hey, I got an idea. Okay, since we're improvising here at the top of the show, and you know what? I'm not even going to cut this out. I promise I will leave this in so the audience can see us podcast professionals workshopping something in real time. Here's what I'm going to do. Okay. So, I'm going to introduce you, and instead of doing your little thing like hi or whatever you do, I want you to go in the house. Right. And so this is going over real well. So the way this
is great.
So Ryan, I'll say, and joining us today, Ryan Fleury, and then Ryan, you go
in the house.
Yeah, okay, and then we'll go around the thing, and we'll see how this works. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna do the intro again. Here we go. This is, of course, a podcast where we talk with advocates and members of the disability community to educate and inspire better conversation about disability. Hey, look who's here! It's Mr. Ryan Fleury
In the house.
It's Mr. Steve Barkley
In the man cave.
And look who it is. It's Miss Liz Malone.
Down in the cellar, but still in the house.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounded way better in my head.
Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Okay. Well, anyways, we try. Listen, we're trying something new. We've been doing this for 10 years. You gotta try something out of the box occasionally. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you get gold. Sometimes meh. You know. So hey, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that might be our new thing.
Okay, Rob, you sound like you had a Red Bull and frickin' vodka before you turned the mic today. I don't know. Am I the only one who's getting the Red Bull vodka vibe?
Listen, that's been my podcast technique for probably 6 years now.
Okay,
It's a little squirrely.
Okay,
since 2017.
Sorry for the expose then.
No, how's everybody?
In the house. In the man cave.
In the cellar.
See, look at this. See, I started something.
You did. It's going to end here, though.
Yeah, no problem. And that, dear audience, luckily that is the last time you'll hear that happen. All right. Well, I think we used up all our bantering time trying my stupid little intro. So I think we should just get right to the show. What do you guys think? Unless anyone has something you want to stop it. Stop it. All right. Well, hey, Ryan.
Yeah, Rob.
Stop. Will you stop it? I cannot take you seriously when you do that.
Yes, Rob. How can I help you today?
What? That might be worse. What the heck are we doing today?
Today we are speaking with Matthew Reeves, who is a legally blind psychotherapist and rehab counselor, helping people thrive while living with disability. And he's also a bumper-to-bum podcast host in the house. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's Cinco de Mayo on the day we record this. So is it Red Bull and vodka or is it just straight tequila?
Yeah, that's right.
Either work.
Yeah, no, listen, thanks for joining us. So why don't we, just to get started, maybe you could just start off with giving us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and a little bit about your vision.
Sure, yeah. So I was diagnosed with Stargardt disease when I was about 12 years old. So I've been living with vision impairment and legally blind the vast majority of my life. I'm in my early 50s now, so that's kind of part and parcel of who I am. And for a long, long time, and we can probably get into this, I was working in a completely different field. But then in my 40s, I switched over and took a left turn in my life and went back to school, got my master's, became a therapist, and now I do a lot of work with people with vision impairments and other, chronic diseases, chronic illness, disability, chronic pain, situations where folks feel like they are not getting along very well with their bodies in one way or another. It's kind of one of the areas that I specialize in. So, and when I was doing that work, I realized pretty quickly that a lot of the folks that needed that sort of emotional and mental health support as they were adjusting to these conditions, they just couldn't access it. There's not a lot of people that do what I do that have this kind of experience, and therapy is expensive. That's another way it's inaccessible. So I decided to launch a podcast to try and create a little bit of community in my corner of the world, to give away that resource to anybody who has access to the internet. So I started the podcast called Insight Out. That's INSIGHT out, to talk about kind of an emotionally honest exploration of what it takes to live well with vision loss. And it's been well received. I'm grateful for that. And it's been a real pleasure to put that together. So I think that's how we got connected.
Well, it's really interesting too. I mean, that's, I think that's the real power of podcasting, is that we can, we do have all of these, we can put all of these resources out into the world for folks that need it. And, especially when you're talking about things like adjusting to vision loss, because that is I feel like that's such a personal experience, but there's also so many variables. You can have somebody that maybe has vision loss earlier in their life or late in their life. You can have somebody who it's a slower process, or you can have sudden vision loss. So I would imagine that, given that, there's sort of a lot to talk about in that sort of realm.
Absolutely. It is both incredibly personal and unique for every individual, because vision loss is so different for every individual. Like you said, you named some of the ways that they vary a lot, and there's a lot more. But also there are some pretty broad themes that show up for most people, not everybody, that can help people feel like what they're going through is not completely foreign. Like, other people have gone through it and have come out with some strength and happiness and life that they enjoy living, that it is possible. So I think those themes they're just as important to recognize as the uniqueness of everybody's story. I think it's both at the same time.
Yeah, and just by its nature, I mean, it can feel very isolating. I imagine the people who are going through vision loss, a lot of times they're the only person in their family, maybe they're the only person in their town, or they aren't connected with any sort of other folks in any sort of a network where they can hear other people's experiences. So, again, I think that it goes back to why podcasts like yours are really important for the community, because I think it's so key for people to hear those stories from people who have gone through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was diagnosed as a kid, this was back in the 80s, and literally the only connection I had to any type of vision loss community came through the mailbox, like paper in the mailbox. And so it was like national organizations that would send maybe a newsletter or catalogs of products for people with low vision. That was the only community I knew, and that kind of persisted for a really long time. And even in the age of the internet, that changed a lot, because there aren't that many of us, so we're not going to gather geographically most of the time. We need to gather online, and oftentimes even those gathering spaces are difficult to navigate, difficult to find, may not offer the kinds of resources or support that somebody needs at that point in their journey. So creating the podcast was just one way to put out what I hope is kind of some curated content that can kind of model or display some other people's experiences and some expertise, not just from me, but from a lot of the guests, that is otherwise really hard to find online, really hard to find, especially if you're facing accessibility issues. Sometimes the web pages are there and they're not accessible. So, a format like a podcast is probably one of the lowest barriers to entry for somebody with vision impairment that I can think of. Not to say that it's zero barrier to entry, but it's low, I hope. So yeah, I think it's a really, really effective format for speaking to our community.
I would think too that being that you are legally blind can put people at ease as well, knowing that you have that personal lived experience, right? You can kind of relate to them on some level. You're not just coming into this as some able-bodied, sighted, rehab counselor.
Yeah, I hope. My experience is not going to be the same as everybody else's, but I think one of the things that informs how I work with people is that I know how hard it is to communicate what I've been through, which tells me that my experience is just my own. And the more I do this, the more I appreciate just how different vision loss is from person to person. And that's just the differences in the eye or the brain in terms of how they're seeing, but what they bring to it is their own story, and the resources they've got, and the connections they've got, and the support systems they've got, the knowledge they've got going into it. Every one of those variables and more, their geographic location. There's so many things that affect what the experience is like for a person, and so I think what my own experience has enabled me to appreciate that, not necessarily to say, oh, well, I've been through what you've been through. It's to say, I've been through something similar, but it's different. And I know it's different. And I'd love, let's appreciate that and recognize that and really honor the successes that any given person has gone through as their own. They get their own reward for going through their own challenges. It's very, very personal.
And I think that what you just said is very, very commendable, because I think when anyone approaches any kind of counseling or therapy environment, there's always that fear that the person they're going to be talking to is bringing a bias to the sessions on some level. And we all have them to some extent. So on one hand, someone might feel that if you have somebody who is fully sighted, that you can just have them hear you and not and just listen and allow you to express yourself without maybe having any judgment of, well, I'm low vision and but I think that it's really important that people know that there are therapists of all different abilities that can just go in there with the right attitude, whether you're sighted or unsighted, and just sort of look at you as an individual and your story, because I know that I had been scared away by bad counselors in the low vision community, because it became boilerplate that they were like, oh, with it, then you should now feel this way, or now, oh, you're experiencing this. I'm like, okay. I'm like, no. Like, do not treat me like this. I'm not a punch card. And so I think that is something that many do subscribe to. And I think it really turns people off from wanting to go into the rehab process.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that breaks my heart. In my very first class of the program I went back to become a therapist, the professor said something that stuck with me. He said, if people go to a bad restaurant, they'll never go to that restaurant again. But if they go to a bad therapist, they'll never go to therapy again. Mm-hmm. And that that broke my heart. So it is so important to create that space where people can feel truly heard and seen for who they are. And you're right. That doesn't make therapists inhuman. We do all have biases. Of course we do. It's part of the human experience. The difference is whether you're aware of those biases and can acknowledge them and own them and be transparent about them. And I think that's what you're talking about. And that's why I think that somebody who maybe who hasn't been through vision loss can still be a good vision loss therapist. It's not about necessarily. I think having a similar experience maybe is an asset, but I don't think it's a requirement. I think awareness of bias is a requirement. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
But yeah, I mean, I'm totally biased of Ryan, and his inability to cowbell, but I still do the show with him,
That's important.
Liz, that's some true grace. That's real
I'm
grace.
listen, I try.
Um, could you speak maybe a little bit about, because I feel like something that a lot of people maybe don't think about is that vision loss can also really affect the entire family unit. Can you speak a little bit to that? And do you sort of do work with, say, an entire family unit?
I You're right. It absolutely can expand to the entire unit. In fact, I'd be shocked if it didn't expand to the entire family unit. I don't do a lot of family therapy. I do a little bit. Sometimes I'll do a family session in the midst of individual therapy, and individual counseling. But to speak to your question, one thing I've noticed that's come up. Well, I guess I'll speak to two things that had come up a lot. One is the role of parent with vision loss, especially with young kids who are not capable of understanding vision loss. They haven't developed the brain structures necessary for empathy. So, you know, and the grief that a parent may feel not being able to see their child, and also the grief they feel when the child doesn't understand why their parent is living a different experience than they are. Yeah, we do a lot of work in that space. That comes up pretty frequently, especially obviously for folks with young kids. And then the other area is more dealing with other adults or other, adolescents and forward. And that I frame as part of the grieving process. And this gets a little complicated, but one thing I've noticed is one of the ways that vision loss grief is different than sort of the more typical grief when we talk about grief, like when somebody dies, is that isolation you were talking about. It is an experience that, we're not all losing the same person in this situation. So I may have lost my ability to see at some one level or another. And then I'm having to adapt to that. And if it's a progressive condition, I'm having to constantly readapt to that. And that is a grieving process that's very, very complicated. At the same time, the members of the family, they are also losing something, but it's not the same thing. They're losing my capabilities. Maybe they're losing my independence. Maybe it's impacting their independence. And then they've got, their own emotions about that, and empathy on the one hand and also frustration on the other hand. And can I even talk about the frustration that I'm feeling? And then they also have to learn from the person who's lost the thing what they've lost. Like they haven't experienced it themselves. So there's this delay between what I've lost and then my ability to communicate that to the people around me. So they're always, inevitably 2 steps behind in the grieving process. So there's this, to make it as almost a scientific term on it, there's like a phase offset between what I'm going through and the people around me. Which is another sense of isolation. If they're just getting used to the thing I lost, 6 months ago, and I've already moved on to the next thing, it's just as hard for me as ever to really feel seen and understood. And feeling seen and understood is just crucial to the grieving process. So it gets really complicated when we start talking about families. I hope I didn't go too deep there. But does that?
Oh no, not at all, not at all. It's really interesting stuff. I mean, we've talked on the podcast for many, many years, talking about vision loss and how it is a grieving process. And we've talked to a lot of folks on the podcast over the years that have described it as much. But it is very deep, and it seems to me that it must also be very different, going back to all of the different variables. Can you speak to a little bit about that, of how grief might manifest differently and I know that it's also a very personal experience, but for example, for somebody who is just does say have something that's degenerative, that is slowly progressing over time, do you find that that's a different kind of grief than somebody that, say, lost their vision suddenly in an accident? And can you kind of speak to a kind of the differences between the two?
Yeah, in that specific case that you're talking about, the difference between a sudden onset that is then stable versus something that's progressive, it is profoundly different. Not to say that the grief itself is different. I think the difference is that the grief is ongoing because we never achieve that new normal with a progressive condition. We never get the respite of saying, okay, I lost this thing. Now I'm going through this process. It becomes something that I'm acquainted with, right? And I understand. With progressive vision loss, there's this additional burden of having to always notice, maybe not always, but often notice something new that I can't do anymore, that I used to be able to do. And that can be really upsetting. And, I'll say this about grief in general. Grief, there's no wrong way to grieve. It is a profoundly human experience. We've got, our DNA is programmed for grief. If we didn't grieve, it would be because we didn't value anything and there was nothing to lose. So grief is a reflection of having something valuable that we've lost. And we've got how many thousands of generations of humanity that we've lost, of people that we're close to and who have protected us and kept us safe and that we've loved. So we are very well equipped to grieve safely as humans. Where it gets dangerous is when that grief doesn't happen. Grief is unpleasant, but it's not dangerous inherently. But when we stall it or prevent it from happening, that's when it can turn into depression or anxiety or, any number of, a somatic condition or, something along those lines. That's where it can really cause some harm. But what does it take then to grieve? Like what does it take to allow grief to move? And the word I like to use to describe that is accompaniment. It needs to be seen and heard by ourselves, by others. And I think that's where vision loss is so tricky, is because it is so isolating. And there's so many different ways that we can, work to stall that grief, because the grief is so difficult and so unpleasant and so exhausting. So we just kind of forestall it and say, nope, not today, or maybe not this month, or maybe not this year, or maybe not ever. And that's when it can get really dangerous, as opposed to merely unpleasant or very, very, and when I say unpleasant, I'm not trivializing it. It can be profoundly unpleasant. But that process is not dangerous so long as it gets accompanied. So we need to be able to accompany ourselves in that, first of all, because we're the only ones who have experienced it. Generally, the people around us haven't lost our vision. Only we have lost our vision. So we need to be with ourselves. And I think that's where, I think it's maybe with vision loss clients, I hope that's maybe one of the most valuable things that I can offer, is the space to allow somebody to grieve their own loss. And then externally, I can accompany them. I can validate what they're experiencing. I can seek to understand it. But nothing is as important as their own ability to be with themselves instead of turning their backs on themselves. And then once that happens, it's generally the next steps down the road come a little bit easier. And that's to do the work of allowing the people around us in on that experience and let them experience our grief with us. And then they can get into the sort of the master class of grief. And that's us accompanying them in their grief, because they've lost something too. But all of this takes an enormous amount of energy and attention and time. So it's hard. It's really hard, and it's really complicated, and it's really different than what most people who have not spent a lot of time studying and talking about vision loss or experiencing vision loss understand. So it takes a lot of work.
Matthew, we've actually talked about that on the podcast because Ryan, he lost his vision very suddenly, and I have RP and it's been progressive. And we've had moments where we sort of compared some of the challenges of each, and I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I remember in one of the episodes Ryan had said that he almost was like, well, okay, boom, bam, boom, it sucks, you're blind, but at least he almost preferred having it in one shot. I don't know, Ryan, is that still?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't fathom what it would be like, as you explained, Matthew, that journey of slowly losing your sight. All of a sudden the lighting changes and now you can't see this or you can't do that. I would almost equate it to watching a loved one slowly pass away and dealing with that ongoing grief, the family dynamic that gets involved as well. You know, I lost my sight in a car accident, boom, it was gone. And sure, there was grief, there was anger, there still can be today, and that was 30 years ago. But it is different, and coming to terms with the fact that my sight is never coming back, I was able to pull up my socks and, you know, surround myself with people who were encouraging and supportive. And, you know, that whole journey initially took about a year for me to get through. And I wouldn't go back to the person I was when I had sight, because I was not a nice guy. I'm a better person today because of my sight loss. So that was, you know, just for me, that was my journey.
Yeah, it's that sudden shock of losing it all at one time. That's not something I've experienced. I'm grateful for you sharing that, because that's not been my experience. I don't know what that's like. I almost use the expression I can only imagine, but I really can't imagine. I don't know what it would be like to wake up in an emergency room going from fully sighted to completely blind. Like that, I can't imagine that. And I don't know what that grieving process is like. I do know that it's survivable. You know, I do know that grief is not going to kill anybody. And for that reason, there's ways to navigate our way through it. But it's going to look different for everyone. And then for progressive vision loss, I think there's another difference, or maybe in this case, it's less about the progressive nature of it and more about the cause of it being, in my case, in Liz's case, something genetic. I think one of the things that a lot of folks will kind of pin a lot of their energy on is the hope of a cure. And I'm a big fan of hope. I love hope. But hope can be weaponized against letting grief happen. And I think that can be dangerous. And I think we're benefited by being aware of when we're doing that. So we can both grieve what we've lost and hope for it to return at the same time. And that's tricky. That's complicated. But awareness of it, just like bias, it's the awareness of it that makes the biggest difference.
So, you know, the other interesting part of this is that, you know, when we talk about loss, we're talking about grief and we're talking about loss, you know, obviously the implication is that it's about vision loss, but there's more to it, right? Like it's not like it's sort of tied to identity as well. Like people feel like they're losing the person that they were, because whatever, they can't, maybe they can't do the job that they were doing, or maybe they can't do some of the hobbies that they used to do, or at least that's how they feel initially, and that sort of helps, you know, sort of fuel that grief. Is that what you find? Is that you're also dealing with a lot of people who feel like they're kind of rebuilding themselves?
Yes, very much so. And I think the way you phrased that is important, that there may be things that we simply cannot do. One of the things I'm grateful that I got from my parents is they never gave me the line, "Oh, you can do anything," because that's simply not true. With Stargardt disease in the 1980s, I was never going to be a neurosurgeon or a jet pilot or a bus driver. Like it ain't going to happen. So I was never fed that line, and I'm really grateful for that because it gave me a more realistic perspective. But you know what? There are things that if you point out any human who has ever lived, there are going to be things that they were never capable of doing. So we all have our limitations. It's part of being human. So what's different about vision loss is maybe encountering that in a really sudden way or a really unusual way that other people aren't understanding. It just feels very distinct. But the fundamental experience is pretty universal. But what you're talking about, I think is really important is like once you have that identity in those activities, in those capabilities, and then it gets taken away through something that you have no control over, that is absolutely loss. And a lot of times our activities do play a role in defining how we view ourselves, how we identify, and how we define ourselves. So if that's the case, now we haven't just lost an activity, we've lost part of our identity. And that can be that can take the ground out from under us and really make us feel unmoored. And that takes some time to process through and grieve and acknowledge and I hope come out. I won't say the other side because I think it's a journey without an end, but we can move through it to the point where we can start to say either, okay, that thing is, I've lost that thing. I loved that thing. I missed that thing. What's the next thing? Or, that thing, the way I used to do it is gone, but maybe the thing itself doesn't have to be. Maybe I can get creative. Maybe I can find a different way of doing that thing. And I think that's another area where therapy can be really valuable. And not to say that I, as a therapist or any therapist, are going to be able to take the thing you love and just magically know the solution for how to adapt it to vision loss. That's not our role, but to create a space where we can process through it and get creative. And sometimes it's just about brainstorming. Sometimes it's just about having a space that encourages the energy it takes to find those solutions or to acknowledge that, okay, in this case, yeah, there is no solution. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes it maybe take another perspective to help challenge the assumption that thing is gone forever. So that's something I try to help folks with when I can.
I think it's really important for people out there that are going through vision loss. Again, not to minimize it, like you were saying, but it's a transformative experience, and that can be positive and negative. That's why, Ryan's story always is really powerful to me because, whenever he always says that, every time he tells that story, he always says the same thing. He always says, yeah, I was actually, a really terrible person, before. And secret is he's actually still a terrible person. I'm just kidding. And we've talked to people who are like, yeah, before I lost my vision, I was a couch potato. I didn't do anything. They lost their vision, and 3 years down the road, they're a Paralympian. They're going to they're going to the Paralympics, or they've gone down a completely different path. And that's not necessarily to say that they have to be going out there and climbing Mount Kilimanjaro or anything like that. But just they're on it. It puts them on a different path, and that can be whatever. You never know, I guess, is my point. And that's why I think, again, going back to podcasting and sharing stories with the community, I think that is a really important message for people who are going through it, to just be like, you don't know. It's yes, there's an element of loss there, but it also is putting you on a new path, and you don't necessarily know where that path is going to take you.
Yeah, and not everybody's Kilimanjaro is a physical mountain. You can give yourself a medal if you've climbed your own personal Kilimanjaro. And have any of you heard of Kintsugi? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is that new for any of you?
That's new for me.
Okay, so Kintsugi is, and I'm only telling you what I've learned. I'm not an expert, but so I could be getting this wrong. But as I understand it, Kintsugi is a Japanese art form that I think is an incredible metaphor for what you're describing. As I understand it, if you take a piece of pottery, fine pottery, and it gets broken, it gets shattered into a bunch of pieces. Kintsugi artists will take that pottery and put the vase or whatever it is back together, and they will adhere the pieces together using gold. So when it's done, the pottery is formed back together, but in every spot where it broke, there is now a seam of gold, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's far more valuable than the pottery ever was to begin with before it shattered.
Wow, I love that. I love that metaphor.
Yeah, I feel it right now. I'm welling up as I even describe it because it's such a powerful metaphor to me. And you know, I'm reluctant early in the therapy process to talk about resilience and strength and what you'll gain from this loss. And like that feels so inaccessible and hokey and minimizing. So I think there's a time and place for the discussion about resilience. But, you know, for those of us who have been on this journey for a long time, we know it's true. We absolutely know it's true. But that's something for everybody to discover in their own time, in their own way.
Hey everyone, Steve here, breaking from the banter for a quick word about Canadian assistive technology. When you're considering assistive tech, we know it's a major decision and every penny counts. That's why we're committed to making your experience as supportive as possible. Our team has over 35 years of experience in the assistive technology sector, bringing expertise, empathy, and service to our customers. We don't just sell products. Our number one concern is ensuring your needs are met. We offer free consulting and we'll make the best recommendation we can, even if the best solution isn't a product we sell. You'll get peace of mind with our price matching policy, guaranteed if you find a lower advertised price. To get you started, we include 1 hour of free remote training with every single product. And for those big purchases, we now offer flexible payment plans through Partially, allowing you to break payments into 2 to 12 monthly installments. We provide toll-free phone support for all products and work with our service partner, Chaos Technical Services, for quick repairs. Plus, our unique loan program lets you try out demo equipment to ensure the device is the right fit before you commit. At Canadian Assistive Technology, we're dedicated to making sure we find the right assistive technology solution for you. Visit us online at www.canastech.com or call us toll-free at 1-844-795-8324. And now, back to the show.
And, you know, and again, going back, that's why podcasts are so really important, is because, you know, those stories are out there for people when they're ready to hear them.
Yeah. Yeah. On their own timetable.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah. Yeah. About half the episodes of Inside Out, I aim for about half of them to be personal experiences. I call them personal perspectives on vision loss. And then the other half are, you know, somebody speaking to kind of subject matter expertise, you know, educating myself and the audience on something. But what I've found is the best episodes are the ones that are a hybrid between the two. Somebody who has experience with vision loss and has become a subject matter expert. And those are the conversations that I find just really flow and are the most valuable for that reason. Yeah.
I find it interesting that, and this is to, you know, everybody in the room, well, we've been doing this show for 10 years, and I don't think there has been a handful of episodes where we've had a guest come on and talk so openly, honestly, and frankly about vision loss the way you are, Matthew. And it makes me wonder, have are we in a better place now when it comes to resources? Because I'm not out there looking for psychotherapists and rehab counseling, but I also don't hear about them. So do we have resources? Is there still a lack of resources? Because I think you should be doing TED Talks on a monthly basis.
Oh, my fear of public speaking would get me in trouble there. But thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I think whether we're better or not, I don't know. I can tell you that there are not enough people having these conversations and helping to lead these conversations. There are far too many people that are going through especially the beginning of a vision loss journey, who feel absolutely at sea, without a compass, without stars, without a buoy, without a shore. And we need, as a community, to rally. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. I know there's some efforts. I know that Foundation Fighting Blindness has recently launched a mental health page on their website. There are some other efforts. I think awareness of the mental health aspect of vision loss is increasing, but not fast enough and not early enough. But yeah, for those that, if I'm the wrong fit, I will do my best to try and help somebody find the right fit. The problem is the resources are not plentiful, which is tough. I did just interview somebody on an episode of the podcast who's still early on in their training. They're practicing, but they're still under supervision, so they're still early on in their training. And they also have vision loss. So I know that at least one other person who's coming around, is getting there. But it's we're such a small community, and the intersection of people who have experienced this or have a personal passion for helping people who've experienced it with the folks who have the privilege of getting the education and the training and actually doing it professionally. It's just vanishingly small, which is a really tough pill to swallow.
So what we've talked about before, one of the benefits of COVID was, Zoom and being able to meet virtually and build connections again when we couldn't in person. Have you found that virtual gatherings, virtual counseling, rehab has really opened up the doors for yourself and others in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, like I mentioned at the top, I'm a career changer. So I went back to get my training for this in 2019. So I was in the middle of grad school when COVID hit. And we all took a crash course, like the rest of the world did. We took a crash course in how to adapt to a big change. And we all learned how to use virtual meetings. And therapists had some particular, challenges to figure out in that space, but we did pretty quickly. It's one of the few times when the state licensing boards moved quickly to allow for that. And I'm really grateful for that. They also allowed for virtual continuing education. We're all required to get continuing education, and that still can be virtual. That's a big deal to me. I don't drive, right? That I work from home. All my sessions are virtual. That's my own accommodation for myself. And I in that sense, I'm an entrepreneur, and I think entrepreneurship is not talked about enough for people with vision loss or any disability. I don't have to ask anybody for an accommodation. I run my own show, and that makes it a lot easier. But so yeah, I think the virtual space kind of was normalized because of the pandemic. It also allows me to do something else that would be logistically impossible. For psychotherapy, when we're dealing with, serious mental or acute mental health issues, I stick to my Georgia license because that's the only state I'm licensed in. But for doing adjustment counseling, I've got a different credential. It's a national credential, and within some pretty serious limits that I manage really carefully and ethically and legally. I am able to see people in other places and do vision adjustment counseling. This is not a technical term. I just use these terms to help me distinguish between the two. I use therapy to describe what I need to be working with folks in my state as part of my license for, and I use counseling to describe helping people adjust to disability or specifically vision loss. And I'm able to do that nationwide because of the output of the pandemic and the technology and the intersection of those two things at the same time. And it's one of those silver linings of something that was really, really tragic.
So I want to talk a little bit about the podcast. How do you find doing the podcast on is it monthly or bi-weekly, or how often do you put it in an episode?
So far I've been publishing every 2 weeks. Which is a machine. Going into it, I don't think I appreciated how much work it would be to keep it rolling. But so far, it's been every 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, trust us. We know we did ours weekly for quite a few years, and it's just recently actually we started doing it every 2 weeks. But so yeah, well know the grind. But the other thing about what we found doing the podcast is that it can be so rewarding, and it can be so enlightening and educational. Every single guest that we have on, that we talk to, I think all of us take something away from that conversation, and we learn something new that we didn't know before. Is that what you're finding with the podcast and your guests, and what kind of things have you been really surprised about in the time that you've been doing it?
The answer is yes. It has been very rewarding. I'm getting to spend time with folks that I otherwise would not get a chance to spend any time with. These conversations feel quite a bit different than how I spend most of my days doing therapy sessions. It's more freeform. It's more bidirectional. And sometimes it's just straight up, more education. I get to ask questions and get curious and learn things, which I love doing. The surprising thing probably shouldn't be a surprise, but it kind of is, and it speaks to what we were talking about earlier about how everybody is completely different and different things resonate with different people. So sometimes, I'll get feedback from episodes where it's like people are blown away by a particular guest. And it's like, that's not the episode that I thought was going to get attention, right? And so it's like, okay, just because that conversation maybe didn't resonate quite as much with me, that doesn't mean it doesn't resonate with somebody else. And that has prompted me to remain more open about, what kinds of conversations are valuable to people. We're all at different places, so that's been one of the things that's helped to keep me humble. I've been, I guess, like I said, I probably shouldn't have been surprised by that, but to whatever degree I was surprised, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, no, the exact same response here on our end. I'm sure everybody would tell you. We've always said, like, look, if one person out there somewhere gets something out of an episode that we did, it's worth the hour, the hour, 2 hours of our recording time to put it out there. It's you don't know, and a lot of times you never do know. Like, it's not like we get constant feedback. It's not like we get tons of mail saying, oh, we absolutely loved this episode that you had so and so on. We generally don't get that type of feedback.
Yeah, you hear that, okay. Fans?
Yeah.
We want that feedback.
We want our ego strokes, damn it.
But the feedback is helpful when we get it. And you're right, it is hard to get. I think most people listen to podcasts and one of the things about podcasts is I think audiences, including when I'm a podcast listener, even having nothing to do with vision loss, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I kind of assume if this is a good podcast, they've got, huge audiences, and they probably get tons of mail, and my voice would be a drop in an ocean. And so what's the point? So I don't tend to communicate back to the podcasts that mean a lot to me in my life.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, this is a really small community. My numbers are not big. They're not big. That's okay. This is a really decentralized community in addition to being a really small community. So getting the word out about my podcast is hard. So I would encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you do have feedback, take advantage of the opportunities. Shoot an email. And that's with not just to, as you say, to stroke the ego. It's not just about that. It's about saying, that was meaningful to me. Please keep doing that. That encouragement can mean a lot. This does not have to be like broadcast television where it's really a one-way street. Podcasts have the opportunity to build community.
I want to know when the TED Talk is.
No TED Talk, but I will tell you that my podcast can be accessed at insightoutpod.com, insightpod.com. And it's on all the platforms, all the usual podcast places.
Excellent. And we will make sure that we leave a link in the show notes as well. Anything else you want to plug? Anywhere people can you want them to go to find you or anything like that?
Sure. If people are perhaps interested in adjustment to disability counseling or low vision adjustment to vision loss counseling, my private practice is Integral Mental Health Services. And that's the URL for that. The website for that is integralmhs.com. And you can just hit the contact page and shoot me a form or a text message or whatever form suits you, whatever feels most accessible. And I'd be happy to get in touch with you and see if it's a good fit, perhaps.
Excellent. Well, Matthew, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And please come back anytime.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the podcast. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Just Matthew, I have a store that's just down the street from the biggest eye care clinic in Vancouver. So I regularly see people who are coming in from their first experience at that clinic, and in a lot of cases, they're coming in with something like macular degeneration, and they're just starting their vision loss experience, and it's a very emotional time for them, of course. So this has been really, really helpful for me just to get more insight into that process. So very much appreciated.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to be in Vancouver later this year. So
come on by, man. I'll buy you lunch.
Go visit the boys.
Yeah, look us up. Yeah, stay in touch. Let's definitely get together.
Sounds good.
Actually, I'm not far. Are you in Atlanta?
That's right. I'm in Atlanta.
I'm in Charlotte, so we're neighbors.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're not far apart at all. It's a long way when you don't drive, but that's a long walk.
And let's clarify just for a second, because there's Vancouver, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia. We're
Vancouver,
in
British Columbia
Canada.
Is where I'm visiting. Is that where you are?
That's where we are.
That's the right choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to make sure when you're buying train tickets that you go to the right one. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew.
Bye-bye.
All right. Night.
Matthew,
There you go.
out of the house.
Yeah. Oh, I should have had him do that. Oh, damn it.
Matthew out.
Damn. Opportunity missed. Well, now we'll have to have him back on. I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to make you guys do that again. Now that we can just treat this week as it was a little bit of a dress rehearsal. Next week, I expect you guys practice.
You do know next show is anniversary show, right?
Well, we gotta talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta figure that out. So I gotta do some brainstorming, figure out what we're gonna do. It's 10 years. We gotta do something big.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get every guest that we've ever had on all on one call.
Oh, geez. Are you going to help? How many pages of contacts that is?
No, and then we'll mix it all together into one big. No, that was everybody
We'll
that
just
we've
get
ever
all of
had
them
on.
to say, in the house.
There you go. I'll just ask them to
That's a
record it
great
and send
idea.
it in.
It's a terrible idea, Rob.
Oh man. Well, we'll figure it out. Well, anything else to say about that?
No, it was just a very good, open, honest conversation.
Yeah, it was. And he's so right. Like we are lacking resources in that sense. Because if you really think about somebody who's going through vision loss, and we've talked about this over the years about how many, all the different aspects that are very important. You got to have a good support network. You want to be dialed into, like, say, an existing blindness or low vision community. Ideally, maybe you have a mentor, somebody that you can reach out to and talk to and ask questions and all of that stuff. And then you should be going through some sort of a counseling thing. I think that's the ideal, pathway. But of course, we've none of that. Maybe we might get one out of the four things, if you're lucky, from, say, your local blindness organization. Not that they're not trying and stuff, but it's hard. You can't. The resources just aren't there for rehab plus counseling plus mentorship plus community building. It's just a lot, and I feel like that's why podcasts like Matthew, where he's doing what he can, and and his work, his counseling work, is just so important, and we just need a lot more of Matthew in the world. That's for sure. In the house. Well, shall we get out of here?
Good plan.
We get out of the house, so to
I need,
speak.
I need some more time for grieving, so I gotta go.
Okay. Yeah, you just want to go eat.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
There
get
you
under
I
your scale.
can multitask.
Let's go find out what our visceral fat is.
Listen.
See, the only fats I know are trans fats and saturated fats and...
Yeah.
Or your homework, guys, is to look at the difference between visceral and subcutaneous.
Well, what would the paunch be? Like, you get the paunch. Like, what is that? Is that visceral
That's the
fat?
subcutaneous, isn't it?
That's
Under the
subcutaneous.
skin.
If it jiggles, it's subcutaneous.
All right. Well, so yeah. You can get that sucked out though, right? Isn't that what liposuction? That's it. It would suck out the subcutaneous fat, wouldn't it?
It would.
It's probably not good for you, I'd imagine.
Well, some people would just do the old diet and exercise, but I guess, look, if you want to go straight for the lipo, and good for you,
Diet and exercise take work.
That's why
a lot of work.
That's why subcutaneous fat is rampant.
Yeah.
Like, we all have it.
Well, if you look at the cost of food, it's easier and cheaper to eat fast food than healthy food.
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
There's,
Not
anymore.
anymore.
Disagree.
getting
Not
close.
anymore.
there's a podcaster, this guy, Dr. Mark Hyman. I really actually enjoy his programming, but he talks a lot about, like, about our fat and health and everything like that. And he says whenever anyone says, like, oh, I don't really have any subcutaneous fat, I'm fine. He's like, lift up your shirt and look in front of a mirror and jig and jump up and down, and if it moves, that's subcutaneous fat.
Yeah, but I feel like a degree of that is normal. Like, everybody has that. Nobody's completely ripped and cut. Well, I guess obviously there are some people out there that are, but for the most part, the average person, you're going to have a little bit of that. You're going to have, like, some cellulite. It's kind of a thing. That's just
Oh
normal.
no, it's not saying that you shouldn't have any, but when you see it in an actual number,
Yeah.
in terms of your body mass, it's a little disturbing.
Yeah, you gotta get rid of that scale. That's your problem.
Well, I think
just
as long as
got
you
it.
come to terms with the fact that if you're in the standard or the normal range, you're fine,
Yeah.
right? Don't get concerned about it. If you're in the normal range, you're good.
Exactly.
It just feels like there's a wagging finger with that standard. It's
Well, they
That's right.
probably build that in, right? Like, it's all they want to make you feel bad.
they're like, well, half the your country's already really fat, so yeah, you blend right in with them. You're just another sheep in the fat herd.
I think a lot of those voices may be in your head. I'm no therapist or counselor, but
I
I
know
think you're internalizing a lot of
we
that.
need to get Matthew back here. So
We do actually. So well, there you go. Well, that'll be another show. We'll talk about fat.
we need to get somebody on who can school us. You know.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna be, first of all, it's like, listen, we all like our food. We know we talk about food enough on this show, so
Yeah.
we need to balance it with something healthy, like bringing a guest on who can talk some sense into us, and then we'll go back and eat what we want.
They'll just talk. They'll try to talk us out of the what it was, Dorito nachos recipes. They'll try to. Their head would explode if they were to read the AT Banter cookbook that we're reading at some point in our lives.
Dorito lasagna.
Dorito, that was it. Yeah, Dorito lasagna. Oh,
Which still has to be done.
oh yeah, it's gonna be so good.
When's the summer barbecue, Steve?
Scheduled that yet, have we?
No,
Yeah, we
yeah,
gotta
get on that.
But Dorito
get that
lasagna
happening.
sound good.
Yeah, it does. Oof, man, that does sound really good. We guys probably get them hungry because we're still here. So let's get the hell out of here. Hey,
Bye.
hey, Liz.
Yeah, somebody here. What's up, Rob?
You're supposed to say in the house, but okay. But no, it's okay. Don't do it. Don't do it. Where can people find us?
In the house.
All right, you did it. Yes. All right, I was expecting it. Okay, good. No, but really, where can they find us?
Oh, never. I'm not really in the house. Okay, never mind. They can find us at atbanter.com.
Yes, they can. They can also drop us an email if they so desire at cowbell at atbanter.com. And, hey, Steve.
Out of the house. Mic drop.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, they can also find us on some social media stuff.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is going to about do it for us this week. Big thanks, of course, to Matthew for joining us. And we will see everybody next time.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions, as well as physical access solutions and augmentative communication aids across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com, or if you're in the Vancouver Lower Mainland, visit our storefront at number 106 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver. That's one block off Broadway at Willow. You can reach us by phone toll-free at 1-844-795-8324 or by email at sales@canastech.com.